Welcome to Backbone Unlimited. My name is Matt Hartsky. In this episode, we're going to talk about something that controls a huge percentage of elk hunting success, but most hunters don't fully understand it. Why elk bed where they do. If you've hunted elk long enough, you've probably experienced this. You hike into a basin that looks perfect, the feel is good, the terrain looks right, the wind seems manageable, but you just don't find elk. Or worse, the elk are there and they blow out before you ever see them. If you're not familiar with who I am, I've been hunting and guiding Western big game for over 34 years, and I've been a professional strength conditioning and nutrition coach for more than 30 years, and I'm here to help you become a more successful and consistent elk hunter and outdoorsman. What a lot of hunters don't realize is that elk spend most of their daylight hours in very specific bedding locations, and those locations are not random. Elk choose bedding areas based on survival. Every bed is positioned where the animal can detect danger before danger detects them. Wind, thermals, terrain structure, visibility, and escape routes all come together in those locations. When you start to understand how elk think about bedding security, something important happens. The mountains stop feeling so random, and you're going to recognize why certain slopes, benches, and ridges consistently hold elk during the day while other areas stay empty. And when you can predict where elk want to bed, you stop wandering the mountains hoping to find elk and start hunting where elk actually live. Elk don't choose bedding areas randomly. Every place an elk beds down is selected because it helps them survive. When you start paying attention to how elk actually use the landscape, three consistent factors show up over and over again: wind advantage, escape routes, and visual security. First is wind advantage, probably the most important. Elk rely on their nose more than any other sense. A bedding elk almost always positions itself where the wind or thermals bring scent from the direction danger is most likely to approach. That means their nose is constantly working while they rest. Second is escape routes. Elk rarely bed in places where they can get trapped. They prefer bedding areas that allow them to leave quickly if something feels wrong. That might mean dropping off the backside of a ridge, or side hilling into timber, or disappearing into a drainage. Third is visual security. Elk often bed where they can watch open terrain below them or along travel routes animals or predators might use. When those three elements all come together, elk create a defensive position. Their nose monitors one direction, their eyes monitor another, and the terrain provides an escape path. And that's exactly the key idea a lot of hunters miss. Elk bedding areas aren't just comfortable resting spots. They're carefully chosen security positions designed to keep elk alive. More than anything else, wind and thermals control where elk choose to bed. Elk rely heavily on their sense of smell, so when they settle into a bedding area, they position themselves where the air movement helps them detect danger from multiple directions a lot of times. In the mountains, air moves in predictable patterns most of the time when it's not swirling. Elk choose not to use those swirling areas most of the time. During the night and early morning hours, cool air sinks downhill. And those falling thermals carry scent down valleys and drainages. As the sun warms the slope later in the morning and throughout the afternoon, air begins to rise uphill. Those rising thermals move scent towards ridge lines and higher elevations. Elk take advantage of these patterns. A common bedding setup places elk with the prevailing wind at their back while thermals move scent from below towards them. In this position, their nose is constantly monitoring what's happened from behind them through the wind, while the rising thermals bring scent from downhill approaches. Elk also frequently use crosswind bedding positions along benches or leeward slopes. Those positions allow them to catch scent drifting across the slope while maintaining a visual advantage downhill. The result is a layered security system. Wind protects one direction, thermals protect another, and the elk can watch terrain below or above them depending on the time of day. This combination allows elk to monitor both uphill and downhill approaches simultaneously. Once you understand how important wind and thermals are, the terrain features elk use for bedding start to make a lot more sense. Certain structures consistently give elk the advantage they need to stay secure during daylight hours. One of the most common bedding locations is benches. Benches create flat or gently sloped areas along otherwise steep terrain. That allows elk to rest pretty comfortably while maintaining good airflow and escape options. Leeward ridges are another classic bedding location. those are the downwind sides of ridges where wind curls over the top and creates stable scent conditions. Elk can bed just below the ridge line with wind covering their back and thermals rising from below. Finger ridges often serve the same purpose. Those narrow ridges allow elk to monitor multiple directions while still having quick escape routes down either side. Elk also prefer and favor north-facing timber pockets. You've probably heard that before. It's because they stay cooler, shaded, and less disturbed during the day. In steeper terrain, bedding can occur along the edges of avalanche chutes, for example, where elk can see into open slopes while staying hidden in nearby cover. Near higher elevations, timberline bedding pockets also happen, right? Because those provide security just inside the tree line. What all of those areas share is structure. Terrain controls wind, visibility, and escape routes. Vegetation matters here, but terrain structure is what truly determines where elk feel safe enough to bed. Hey, if you hunt public land elk and you're tired of grinding through random seasons, I built the elk hunting series of ebooks for you. Most hunters don't struggle because they lack effort. They struggle because they lack a system. And that's exactly why I built the elk hunting ebook series as a complete progressive framework for Western elk hunters who are done guessing and ready to hunt with intention. Volume 1 is going to be Foundations and Reality. I reset your mindset and expose the assumptions that quietly wreck seasons. In Volume 2, Finding Elk and Understanding Pressure, you'll learn how elk actually move under pressure so you can anticipate instead of react. In Volume 3, Terrain, Wind, and Position, I break down how to use landscape and thermals to consistently create opportunities. In Volume 4, Calling, Silence, and Pressure, sound becomes a decision tool, not an impulse. In Volume 5, Bow Hunting Execution, we're talking about close range strategy so you can finish your encounters. And in Volume 6, Late Season and Post-Rut, we're talking about how elk shift after the rut and how to adapt when others quit. This is a system built for consistency. This isn't theory, it's a structured system to help you find elk, read country, and make confident decisions every season. Buy each volume individually or bundle them all to save 50% off at backboneunlimited.com. Elk bedding behavior also changes depending on the structure of the herd. Cows, calves, satellite bulls, and mature herd bulls often use the same general areas, but they rarely bed in exactly the same way. Cow groups typically bed together in clusters. When several cows bed in the same area, they create a built-in security system. Multiple animals mean multiple sets of eyes, ears, and noses working at the same time. Some cows will bed facing downhill while others face different directions, allowing the group to monitor a wide area for danger. During the rut, satellite bulls often bed close to cow groups, but not directly inside the herd. Those younger or less dominant bulls stay nearby so they can quickly move in if an opportunity arises, but they usually maintain a little distance to avoid constant conflict with the herd bull. Mature bulls often behave very differently. Outside of active breeding periods, a lot of older bulls choose bedding locations that are separate from the main cow herd. Those bedding areas are often harder to reach, or thicker, or steeper, or positioned in terrain that offers stronger wind protection. This is especially true on public land where hunting pressure exists. Older bulls survive by choosing bedding locations that provide maximum security and early warning, even if it means bedding further from the main herd. When hunting season begins, elk bedding behavior often changes pretty quickly. The same elk that might bed in relatively open or predictable locations during the summer begins shifting towards places that offer a lot more security. One of the most common changes is elk bedding in deeper timber. Thick cover helps break up visibility and gives elk more time to detect danger before it gets close. Those timber pockets often occur on really steep slopes where the terrain itself discourages human movement. The nastier, the better. Elk also begin using steeper terrain and harder to access benches. Areas that require long side-hilling hikes, difficult climbs, or complicated access routes naturally see less hunter pressure. Elk quickly learn to favor those types of locations. North-facing slopes often become even more important during hunting season, too. Those slopes stay cooler, hold thicker vegetation, and provide shaded bedding cover during daylight hours. Another change hunters sometimes notice is increased midday movement. When elk feel pressure in traditional bedding areas, they might relocate during the day to safer locations, especially if human activity disturbs them early in the morning. All of those adjustments come back to one simple reality. Once pressure increases, elk stop prioritizing comfort and they begin prioritizing security above everything else. Once you understand the factors that control elk bedding behavior, you can start predicting bedding areas long before you ever step into the mountains, right? Instead of just wandering through country hoping to bump into elk, experienced hunters start by studying terrain and identifying the places elk are most likely to spend their daylight hours. The first thing to look for on a map is terrain benches. I have a whole video on benches. Those small shelves along steep slopes often create perfect bedding locations where elk can rest comfortably while maintaining wind advantage and quick escape routes. Next, pay attention to leeward ridges. Those are the downwind sides of ridge lines where wind curls over the top while thermals can still rise from below during the day. Elk frequently bed just below those ridges because the airflow helps them monitor multiple directions at once. North-facing slopes are another key area to evaluate. Those slopes tend to hold thicker timber, the cooler temperatures, and the shaded bedding cover throughout the day. You should also look for bedding areas above feeding zones. Elk commonly feed in open parks, meadows, or basins during the night, then move uphill into secure bedding terrain shortly after daylight. When experienced hunters combine terrain structure, wind patterns, and feeding locations on a map, bedding areas are going to start to stand out pretty clearly. Long before the hunt begins, they already know where elk are most likely to spend the day. When you start looking at elk country through the lens of bedding behavior, the mountains are going to begin to make a lot more sense. Elk are not bedding randomly. Every single bedding location is chosen because it gives the animal the best possible chance to detect danger before danger detects them. Wind advantage, terrain structure, visibility, and escape routes all come together in those locations. When those elements line up correctly, elk create a defensive position where their nose, eyes, and the landscape all work together to keep them safe. And that's why a lot of hunters hike through miles of country without finding elk during daylight hours. The elk are there, they're simply bedded in places designed to avoid detection. The hunters who consistently find elk are the ones who learn to recognize those patterns. Instead of wandering the mountains hoping to stumble into elk, they begin to identify the terrain where elk are most likely to bed. And once you can predict bedding areas, you start hunting elk where they actually live in their bedroom during the day. Now, if you want to go deeper into elk movement, pressure patterns, terrain positioning, and structured decision making, that's exactly why I built the elk hunting series of ebooks. It's a progressive system designed to help you understand how elk actually use country and how to position yourself accordingly. I have a link to those ebooks in the description. If you want hands-on application and real-time breakdowns, we've built an in-person Elk Camp 2026 that is built around the same philosophy: structure, preparation, and execution in real terrain. You can check out Elk Camp 2026 at backboneunlimited.com. And if you want ongoing access to the Team Backbone community, classroom, my full digital vault of elk resources, private discussion, and direct communication to me for planning, you can join Team Backbone at backboneunlimited.com underneath our membership tab. Everything we talk about here is connected. Preparation is not a single video, it's a system. Thanks for being here. I appreciate all of you. Until next time, train harder, hunt smarter, and never settle.